I am Todd Vinson. Welcome to Base Camp Wisdom, a podcast with people that weathered the storms, traveled the hard miles, and made it to the other side. In this podcast, we're going to explore life lessons, valuable insights, proven tools and experiences that will help guide you on your own leadership journey. So grab your cup of coffee, sit back and listen to some seasoned Sherpas who've not just weathered the storms, but they made it to the other side. Welcome to Base Camp Wisdom.
Hey, Todd here. Next episode of Base Camp Wisdom. Excited today to be with Joe Jacoby, a good friend of mine. Little background on Joe. He's competed in 2 Summer Olympics. He won the gold medal in the C2 event back in '92 in Barcelona. And you probably win the award for the best background when you turn your camera here in a little bit when we start talking. But Joe, I'm really excited to be with you today. So bon dia.
Bon dia, Todd. I'm going to carry my camera out onto the balcony. So I am in the city of La Seu d'Urgell, which is in the Spanish state of Catalonia. A lot of people know Barcelona. I'm about 2.5 hours north of Barcelona up in the mountains. And I live in the town where I won a gold medal at the Olympics in 1992. And I'm walking out onto my balcony right now, and I'm just going to turn the camera behind me.
Man,
and
oh man.
That is the 1992 Olympic whitewater canoeing channel. The water is on. We have athletes from all over Europe competing here at the Pyrenees Cup this weekend. And I think the most important or relevant thing to the audience here is that not only is this a really beautiful place, but almost every athlete that you see coming down the channel right now, they have one goal. And their goal is to compete at the Olympic Games in Oklahoma City in 2028. And man, I can't believe this is where I live. By the way, the World Championships in 2027, which will be the global qualifying race for the Olympics in Oklahoma City, will be here in La Seu. So,
wow, that's pretty special.
It is. So all those athletes have to actually, they qualify a start position at the Olympics in Oklahoma by doing well in the World Championships here in La Seu d'Urgell.
Wow, that's going to be special. Will you be in Oklahoma City, I'm hoping, in 2028?
Can you say that again?
Will you be here in Oklahoma City in 2028 then for the Olympics?
I would love to. That's the goal,
Okay.
Maria and I are hoping that that's going to work out that way. Todd, I don't know if you've met. I know we've talked about Mike Ming before. Mike,
right,
who built, worked for GE for many years. He built the Oil and Gas Research Center for GE over there off of I-235, I think back in 2012, 2013. And Mike is amazing, humble human being, one of my just really good friends. Such a lovely human being. Mike, was the chair of the Oklahoma City Boathouse Foundation for a lot of this time period that Oklahoma City was negotiating with Los Angeles for the Olympics. I think one of the things that we talk about is that, over here in Europe, you see these beautiful cathedrals. And, people are always curious about who the architect was who built the cathedral. And Mike always says, someone had to, just lay the bricks in brick by brick, rock by rock. And I think, Mike said something very profound. He's like, we are just so lucky that we got to sort of put in a few bricks, into the foundation there. And that's good. That's good enough for me. I love Oklahoma City. I love what the Whitewater Center and what River Sport contributes to the community. And I'm very excited about long-term what the venue and what the Olympics means to young people in Oklahoma City. I think it's very exciting for canoeing in the United States, but I think it's really exciting for the development of sport and youth opportunities in Oklahoma City.
Right. And you're one of those bricks that were laid in that foundation as well. We have a mutual friend, Steve Sturgis, that introduced us to each other. And
yeah,
man, grateful for this relationship. And then even your daughter, when she was here training and competing as well, she's actually named after the city that you live in and won the gold medal in. So that's also pretty special.
Yeah, I have no doubt Sarah would like to be at the Olympics in Oklahoma City as well. But that's what it's about, right? We're on this journey and the people that we're on the journey with, that's what it's all about. And that's what the Olympics really represents to me. Of course, having lived here for 7 years now, and I have my own Olympic story here in Los Angeles. So I always tell the athletes and the coaches that I said, you have to think of Oklahoma City as like this big group of people that just wants to open their arms and give you guys a big hug. And I said, it's going to be a really different experience than the Olympics in Los Angeles, which will be wonderful as well. But I think what this competition does in the way of kind of opening up the Olympic Games to people who live in the center of the country, I mean, you start to sort of figure out the cities that surround Oklahoma City, like Dallas, Fort Worth, Little Rock, Arkansas, St. Louis, Kansas City, Denver, and you just sort of make this circle. Like, there are a lot of people who can come to Oklahoma City, not have to deal with price gouging, get a hotel room at a fair price, have no problems with traffic, and see Olympic medal events that would not have been accessible to so many people in the middle of the country had they been aiming to do that in Los Angeles. So
absolutely,
I'm really excited that this is unfolding the way it is in Oklahoma City. Truly just, I mean, it gives me goosebumps.
Well, it was amazing to watch you walk out on the balcony, and I, follow you and I see all your pictures there of the river. I didn't realize it was, like you said, 50 meters from where you live. So what a view.
Yeah.
Obviously, the view inspires and it impacts you, but tell me a little bit how kayaking has shaped your life.
We have the privilege, the honor of building coaching collaborations with clients. I think we get to have conversations with people who want to do better and improve. And I think there's always a little bit of a sort of a starting point, like, like where does this journey, this collaboration going to start? And one of the things I think that canoeing has really helped me to understand in my own influence is that I like to ask people, like, what got you excited when you were 10, 11, 12 years old? And it's not that we have to go back and do that, but I think we can really start to infer about what it was about that activity. What were some of the values, what were some of the skill sets, what were some of the relational aspects of that activity that you like, so that we can really help, figure out like what your direction starts to look like. And I always say, I mean, kayaking is this very individual, it's you, the boat, the water, it kind of, it has these elements of you against yourself, you against another person if you're competing, and you against nature. And those are three powerful kinds of, competition that we're trying to sort through in life. But I will just say that for me, I was just always attracted to the quality of the people that I got to go canoeing with and that I got to compete with. And my mom saw that at a really young age as well. Like, she met the coach. This was when I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area on the Potomac River when I was 12, 13 years old. And I mean, what parent like just drops their son off at the river and says, I'll be waiting here when you come back. And
maybe
she was not, my mom was like the antithesis of an overlander, and, but what she got, my mom always had a really good sense for kind of putting me in a position to be around, to be guided by the right kinds of people, whether that was coaching and canoeing, whether that was the headmaster at an Episcopalian school that I went to for a couple of years in the DC area. Like, it was always about, she knew for me, it was always about connecting with the right people. And it's as exciting and challenging and natural and gravity oriented as kayaking is, that's all great. I still love that today. I still enjoy that today, but nothing is more important than the people and the relationships that have come out of that sport. So that's really, what kayaking taught me, is it really gave me a sense of an activity that is dependent upon me to do the activity. There was no like football coach in my ear, like, Jacoby, where were you? Why'd you miss practice yesterday? Go run 5 laps. No, it wasn't like that at all. You're at the river because you want to be at the river. There. And then beyond that, if you show up the river, you find the most unconditional support and camaraderie and friendship to support your individual pursuit, your individual relationship with nature. And that was the best part. It's still the best part.
That was me in cross country when I ran cross country in high school. I'm watching my girls do that, but
yeah.
the trail is a little more forgiving than the river. So,
Maybe.
we had an experience this last summer. All of our family went up to Vail and went down to Idaho Falls and went whitewater rafting.
Yes, I know it well.
It's, the water's moving, but it's like, this is a novice course. We're all beginners, and we've got 3 rafts full of family. There's about 17 of us, and we're just, you're riding the old school bus down to the river, and they're giving you all the things that could go wrong and what you should do if those things do go wrong. But don't worry about this. This rarely happens, but this is what you do.
Yes.
Feet up, turn around, face the river. You are your own rescuer. You are your best rescue. And so we're all listening as we're watching this and that going down the river. And we get in the river and we start doing our little deal. We've got our little guide with dreadlocks that's about 5 feet tall that's navigating all of us. And we turn this corner and we come down, and the raft in front of us is another one of our majority of people in the kayak are our family, and it's pinned up against the rocks. And we're just like a magnet being drawn into that rock. And our raft just goes like a taco, and it shoots all 8 of us, including our guide, out into the river. And so now you've got an 8-person rescue. Our guide goes into a swirly and is down in the water. I'm hearing my daughter behind me, turn around, feet up. And I'm trying to get turned around. And I watched all my family with just sheer terror on their face. Water's about 48 degrees. I see one go by this way, one go that way. I think I've seen a couple get to the shore. I'm 6'4" and 240 plus. And so I'm getting to the shore. Water's moving from the snow melt, but I can't hold on to the rocks. And so it's dragging me down the river the whole time. I'm not really concerned about myself. This is all going in stop action, slow motion, but it goes on for about, I go 3/4 of a mile down that river before someone comes up behind me and I can grab their raft and they drag me in. So, I'm thinking the whole time, all the things they told me of what could happen, oh, that won't happen. Every single one of those things happened going down that river. And we got out and they're going, we've never seen that happen before here in that spot of the river. Well, yeah, lucky me. But after I got out of that, I'm thinking about your conversation about moving in towards the rocks. And I'm going, This isn't quite how Joe described it to me. We talked about the power of that. So after I survived my rafting trip, I'm sitting here with you, but talk to me about the whole concept about moving towards the rocks.
Yeah, as I do, actually one of the things I love about that story, Todd, is really the part of your daughter that with all of that going on, she's the one who says, on your back, feet first, right? They teach you how to swim in the river. But really what I think is interesting for people listening along is that I think the thing about when you go whitewater rafting, whether it's on a river in Colorado or you go rafting at River Sport, these safety talks, it's so interesting. I think what they're designed to do is to kind of get you out of the idea that an experience is meant to be perfect, and sort of the coaching twist on that is that we should kind of go through our pursuits like, yeah, they could be amazing, but we should prepare for like a range of circumstances, a range of things that could happen. I think a lot of people really think of the most idyllic outcome and they prepare for that and they work towards that. And the moment that it isn't like that, they kind of want to give up and say, no, this isn't for me. And I think what I like about, what happens in these kind of situations is that they may not be perfect, but I think when you sort of prepare for the range of outcomes, then you actually have the ability to grow and change from these situations that didn't go as well to the point where like, yeah, I would do that again. But I love the part that, that your daughters, had that presence to say to everyone, hey, on your back, feet first. I love that. So
I'd been on the river before. I'd never been in the river. That's two different things.
But that's, it's okay. I mean, it's just a part of the experience. Like, I mean, you can think about in your life and in business and in relationships of, where you've been in the boat and things are going pretty well, where you've been in the boat and the boat is not where you want it to be. And you can think of situations in your life where you weren't in the boat at all. Like you were out of it, swimming in the river. And like, I've really got to reset in a major way. And this is why I love talking about this metaphor. And I think why this metaphor is going to be really, really powerful over the next 3.5 years in Oklahoma City because, the mayor has made the challenge. He said during his State of the City speech last summer that Oklahoma City needs to become the most educated whitewater canoeing city in the United States. I love that. And these conversations are really helpful to that, and this is how you take experiences on the river and you say, like, what does this look like in my river of life? And to your question about aiming for the rocks, a long segue into this, Todd, but I will start here. I think a rock is a stable object in the middle of a moving medium. And so our natural instinct is to say, abort, get away, avoid it, get as far away from it as possible. And what happens in life is that when you really avoid the rocks and the rocks are in the middle of the river, you end up on the sides of the river, where the water is really shallow. You can't get any good strokes with the paddle. You have these shoaly kind of rocks and you're just bumping your way down and it's not fun and you just kind of want to get it over with. And if you think about navigating the river of life, like that's not very exciting, interesting engaging way to live our lives. And what we misunderstand about rocks, or what we get wrong about rocks, is that, yes, they are stationary objects, but fundamentally speaking, these obstacles that we have in our life, they look like if we get close to them, they're going to hurt us. Like if we face the obstacle right up close, it's going to hurt us. But the truth is, what happens is the water goes up on the rock and then it releases around the side of the rock, often faster than the normal speed of the current. So when you confront the obstacles and you get close to them and you're right on them, you find faster and newer currents of which to interact with. And you begin to see that the obstacle isn't obstructing the river. It's just deflecting the current in a slightly different direction. And I think when you start to see the things that we're resisting most, the things that we're most we fear the most, those are opportunities to go, I'm going to paddle at the rocks. I'm going to go closer to the rocks.
That's good. Is there a time that, that was our trip down Idaho Falls was a marker? I talk about it often and you give a lot better context to what happens there. Was there a time in your life that's been a foundational moment, mile marker for you that really shaped who you are today?
It's hard to, it's really interesting. I mean, I've certainly had my share of mishaps on the river that I think are really helpful in seeing how I navigated the river and the choices that I was making. I don't want to call them negative experiences, Todd, because they were experiences that shaped who I am today. I mean,
may have felt negative in the moment.
Yeah. So in 18 months before the 1992 Olympics, I was out paddling the river in a solo boat, not my racing doubles boat with my doubles canoe partner, but I was in a solo boat with a good friend of mine. We were running a small river in southeastern Tennessee, and I dislocated my shoulder running a small drop, like a small waterfall. And after I dislocated my shoulder, everything that could go wrong, went wrong. Mainly when I released myself from the boat, the river current pushed me right and the access road to this incredibly remote rural river was on the left, which the long story short of this, Todd, is that my shoulder was out of its socket for 5.5 hours before it was reset into the socket. And this was 1.5 years before the Olympics. And I was just crushed in that, I was okay with the pain. I was okay with the setback. But the idea of feeling like I let my doubles canoe partner down was the worst feeling. It was terrible. And, we had that conversation and we talked about what it meant to come back from that and what that process was going to look like. And we used that not to just physically improve ourselves, like in my case, improve my shoulder, but, at this point, my doubles canoe partner and I were starting to produce some pretty good results. We were winning medals in international races, even winning World Cup races. And, we were having the mental side of peak performance was really starting to challenge us, dealing with the expectations. And we used that time when I was injured to actually start working with the head of sports psychology for the United States Olympic Committee, who turned out to be the most important resource for us in ultimately winning the Olympics, 18 months later, not just physically recovering from that injury, but how my doubles canoe partner and I worked together and how we built a partnership that, learned a partnership that learned how to deal with the stress and the expectations of getting better and wanting to be successful at the highest level. It's
And
kind of
working through
easy to start.
adversity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy when you first start and there's no expectations. But once you stand on that podium once, maybe twice, that you start to see yourself differently. The canoeing world starts to see you differently. And how you manage that has a lot to do with how your most inside circle relationships start to form. And, Scott and I already had enough challenges. We were really, really different from each other. But that was also that diversity, those things that made Scott and I different is also what made us a great doubles canoe team as well.
That's good. That's good. So how do you manage expectations now? And I think about just now you're talking, instead of going from the Olympics and competition about the river of life, how did that change your mindset on how you manage expectations for yourself?
So first of all, Todd, I've been through a lot of life change in the last several years, and sometimes I'm asked about like, hey, what kind of advice would you give to your younger self? And when I answer that question today, I mean, it's absolutely nothing. The thing about my life today, and I want to answer this question, but I just want to set this up by saying this: the last 5.5 years of my life have been the most amazing 5.5 years of my life. My health, my energy level, my relationship with Maria, my creativity, my work, like it's been so good. And I've realized that all the other things, good, bad, indifferent, that have happened before that if I changed any of that, maybe that doesn't lead to the last 5.5 years of I'm just enjoying what I'm doing so much. And I think that to answer your question about adversity and just sort of mindsets and stuff is that I think once upon a time in my life, I was always thinking about getting better, which is fine. Wanting to do better, wanting to improve is a good thing. But I think when you believe that happiness exists somewhere else than where you are today, that's where, things get problematic. And one of the things, the way I would answer that question about how I work with this today is that I wake up every day. I spend a lot of time in different ways, but a lot of time being grateful for being happy with what I have today. And
That's good.
by doing that as a baseline, if nothing else happens, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing what's happening around me, the things I get to see, the things I get to learn, the people I get to do it with, and the people I get to support and contribute to, like, it's all great. And it doesn't mean that I don't want to do new things, that my level of curiosity is as much as it's ever been before. I love learning and doing new things and trying new things. But that's the thing, is that if you really believe that happiness or success or something that you want lives beyond where you are today, and that, today isn't good enough, that's a really hard place to go to. It's not that you won't accomplish what you don't want. I just think that it leads me to believe that there may be some challenges once you get what you think you want.
Yeah. Remember when you were here in Oklahoma City and we'd have coffee together, you talked about starting lines and finish lines. Unpack that a little bit in light of what you just told me.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are always thinking about the results. I think they're always thinking about the outcome. If I could double my income, if I could cut my work schedule in half and keep the same income, or just something like that, that sounds, or I would like to have a house at the lake, or, I'd like to have this kind of car, it's something that does feel like a finish line. And, one of the things that's unique about the view that I showed you from my house is that on the Olympic course that I'm looking at, even when I look out my window right now, I'm looking right at the start line, Todd. I'm not looking at the finish line. And
wow.
The reason I talk about start lines this way is that in our sport, it's not a head-to-head race, not the sport that I did. It wasn't a head-to-head race. It's like skiing, where it's like one athlete on the water at a time, just like in skiing, one skier on the hill at a time. And so they start on 1 minute intervals at the Olympic Games, or now it's 2 minutes, but at the time we had 1 minute. And you're in the start area for 1 minute. And I tell people that it's like the most precious, unique space I've ever spent time in on earth. Like, it was like you're so stripped down, like all the bravado, all the expectations, everything is gone. It's kind of like you're just naked with your raw abilities, and like that's it. And I think it's really precious space. And when you cross the start line, all you're doing is, you're present in the moment. You're seeing what you can do with what you have right now. And you're sort of carrying that forward, stroke by stroke, step by step, down the river. And you're navigating these obstacles, and you're working through these hard moves. And the race doesn't matter. All you're doing is you're just trying to perfect your own way down the course. But I think that we don't give enough thought to how we prepare ourselves to cross the start line. And for most of our lives, even when we do cross the finish line, it's not really a finish line. It's just another start line. I think as far as we know, there's only one finish line in life, and we'll know it when we get there. And that's that. I don't know when that's coming, but it's not right now as we're having this conversation. So everything else, it's about start lines, and every day is a start line. Every day you can put yourself in the best position to do the best you can with what you have, if you're willing to carve out that time and make that precious space.
That's good. That's good. All starting lines. That'll
all starting
help the things that we battle: burnout, anxiety, fear, all those things. I mean, that's such a huge mindset shift.
Yeah. I think when we look at the forces that are holding us back, and I think it really depends on, I just think on a surface level, you can go deep into those topics, but, let's keep it a little more surface level for now. What I'm sure about is that if there is something that you want to overcome in your life, a negative, just something that feels negative to you, whether it's health, whether it's a relationship issue, whether it's a work issue, what I'm sure of is that the better position that you're in, like the better, I call this, in my thinking in waves, surfing waves in the ocean, I call this, it's step one, it's called basic speed. And your basic speed is like your all day, everyday speed. And your ability to just sort of keep moving at a slow and steady speed versus getting tired and, just feeling fatigue. That is like the hardest way to work with tension, to work with negativity. And so the better you are at just showing up every day as like slightly better version of yourself tomorrow than you were today, or today than you were yesterday, then you're going to be in a better position to make choices about what you're trying to overcome, what you're trying to work through, and start to make choices that will put you in a position to change. But it is interesting, and this is a little counterintuitive, and it's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's like fact or anything. I know having purpose and having direction is so important, but I'm not like the biggest fan of trying to help people figure out their purpose from like the absolute low point in life. Like the first thing I like to try to do, and I'm saying this to like a fellow, lover of nature and lover of the outdoor. I think when you just start to get moving before you decide what your next step is really going to be, just that little bit of movement in nature. It doesn't have to be climbing a mountain. It doesn't have to be going to Yosemite. It doesn't have to having like a super cool vehicle that, takes you over big mountains. If you're in Oklahoma City, you have amazing parks, you have amazing resources. Maybe you have like a little garden, beside your house where you can sit for a few minutes and observe and notice nature. This is what I mean by basic speed. It's like we always hear from people how much better they feel when they've gone for a walk, or they just stand up and they move outside. And, in Oklahoma, by the way, I know not everyone listening is from Oklahoma, but it's not sunny and perfect every day. You get wind, you get snow, you get rain. Go for the walk anyway. It doesn't have to be for an hour, but get out there and feel the rain and the wind on your face a little bit. This is how you build your basic everyday, all day speed. And once you do that, then we can have a much better, more effective conversation about things like purpose and direction and your why, and start to move you into the process of really surfing spectacular life waves.
That's good. That's good. What are some of the next steps there? You talked about, your basic speed. What are some of those others when you talk about waves?
Yeah. So the short story here is that I've been this river paddler my whole life, and now I'm learning how to be a paddle surf waves in the ocean.
It's a whole different
And
game, isn't it?
it is. It's really different, and I love learning something new. I have an amazing coach named Boyan who has this. He has this progression, 7 steps to surfing a wave. And when I first heard this, Todd, I was like, "This sounds horrible." And I said this to Boyan, like, "Boyan, surfing wave is supposed to be like artistic and creative and cool. Like, dude, I'm surfing a wave." And Boyan is like, "I'm not trying to take away, dude, surf the wave. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of structure, a little bit of methodology to where you are at different parts in the process. So if something goes wrong, you can recover well." And I realized it was at that moment that inside all of us, we have like an inner artist and an inner scientist. And it's upon us to sort of reckon that balance between the two, even if we lean heavier towards one side than the other. And so that's when it sort of hit me. And I took Boyan's surfing progression. I changed a few things around. I cut it down to 5 steps. But basic speed is the first thing. It's a lot, life really starts to work itself out if you just start to move a little bit. And then the second step is direction. So I don't think that the world has a wave surfing problem in terms of I think people are surfing waves. But as if I look around LinkedIn, I just think people are surfing waves in any direction as long as it's a wave. And the problem with that is that when you get the metaphor wrong and you really treat it wrong, if your goal is to go, just theoretically go north to the lighthouse, but hey, the waves are going to the west out into the middle of the ocean today, and I'm going to surf those waves, it's a huge mistake. You're just going to end up further away from where you want to go. It's just better to just kind of ride out the westerly waves and keep paddling north until the waves go in your direction. So direction is step 2. That really is like your why, your purpose. Step 3 is one of my favorites, and I think it's so overlooked in the world we live in today. It's called wave selection. And so wave selection could also be called wave deselection. So I think everything in the world today looks like a great wave. And you know what? It might be. But the thing is, and this is some of the best advice Boyan ever gave me, he said, when it all is said and done, you're not going to be judged by the waves you surf. You're going to be judged by the waves you let pass you by. And that is wave selection to a T. And when you start to figure out which waves are not for me, then the waves that are for you become really, really clear. So that's
Crystal
step 3.
clear.
So you do these 3 things. This is even before you surf a wave. You've got basic speed, you've got direction, and you've got wave selection.
Yeah,
and
I got
these
clarity.
are beautiful preparation tools. And then the 4th step is to surf the wave. It's so clear and obvious. We have these waves in life and in business and in relationships and in health and creativity. They're all rideable waves. And there's a lot of techniques. And I won't go, we could talk for hours on surf the wave. But what I will say that I think is really helpful for people listening is the concept of equilibrium. That's what I'm shooting for when I surf on a wave. Equilibrium is not balance. Equilibrium is positioning between 2 opposing forces. So when you're surfing, if you're surfing a wave, what you really desire is the free energy that the wave gives you. That's a lot more fun. Relationship, work, health and wellness, creativity, it's a lot more fun when you've got free energy helping you out. But to be in a position of equilibrium, it's not just about attaining the gravity that the wave gives you. If the speed of gravity is faster than the wave, you lose the wave. So you need friction to slow yourself down. Or if you have too much friction, if you're too resistant, you need more gravity. So we're always sort of balancing when we surf the wave between friction and gravity. And it's so true in everything we want to improve upon in life. And so that's step 4, surf the wave. The 5th one is the funniest one. So one thing you have to understand about Boyan, big, huge Bulgarian guy who has this surf ski business in southern Spain. And he says, step 5 is called yeehaw. And it's a form of celebration. It's like recognizing what you're doing well when you're doing it. If you're in a position of equilibrium on a wave in life or in business or in relationships, recognize it. You say yeehaw, but the way he told me, you have to think about this thick Bulgarian accent. And he looked at me, he said, Joe, when you say yeehaw, you got to say it like you mean it, like you're from Texas.
Or Oklahoma.
And yeah, and I just exactly, and I just thought that was so funny. And often it's honestly the step that I feel like I need the most work on as well. Maria is like in the double surf ski. She's like yelling yeehaw all the time. Like she would tell you she says it too much. And I'm the one who's like, I don't say it enough. Like I love that she says it as much as she does. You know, I'm just like focusing on like surfing the wave. And it's like, yeah, I need to have more fun with it and celebrate and recognize that. So you put all these 5 things together, Todd, and I think it is an unbelievable metaphor for, you know, how we sort of work our way through challenges. And I think in coaching, I think coaching in general, like coaching, it's really hard to do coaching wrong. Like I think there's a place for all kinds of coaching, but I do see, like, for example, hey, you're here and the top of the mountain is here and we just need to get you from here to here. And I think that mountain metaphor, the more I think about it, I think it has a negative effect on people's inner voice. I don't think there's anything wrong with climbing a mountain. I think it's a good thing, but I think seeing the top of the mountain as an end all is a big mistake. There's no real estate on top of a mountain. There's nowhere up to go from there. And there's very little oxygen once you get there. And I think that tragically what happens on Everest is that a lot of people get to the top of Everest and a lot of people die on the way back down.
Yeah.
And trying to get to wider landscape with less, you know, with oxygen, with more oxygen. And it's tragic. You know, I think that the whole mountain metaphor is really misused in leadership development and in coaching and consulting. And so, I really like the wave surfing progression. I mean, I love talking about it with people. I'm open to, you know, where I'm not getting it right. I love that conversation with people. But yeah, I think it's really helpful to people and it's something that you can employ. For me, I use it in my life. It's been a game changer for me. But at the end of the day, I really just want to surf waves and see beautiful things from the water with Maria. And that ends up being like how I ended up in writing this weekly essay called Thinking in Waves.
Well, and that's a great metaphor. And it's not just a metaphor for me either, because I about died on that mountain. And so what you talked about earlier on how you recover.
Yes.
I think that's a conversation that men need to have more often and be honest with each other. You know, how do I recover? And there is opportunities after that recovery. I mean, I love how you talked about that with your shoulder separation and all the pain and trouble that went on, but what happened on the other side of that. And there's life after a gold medal too, right?
Well, completely, Todd. Actually, if we go back to step 1 of the wave surfing progression, the basic speed, what basic speed is really honoring is this idea of choosing to manage energy over time. You know, and I think, I mean, this plays into the energy world that exists in Oklahoma City as well. It's not just about expending energy, it's about replenishing energy. It's your ability to have the energy you want to do the things that matter most is not a function of pushing your personal wave up high. It's equally or more as much about limiting the drops of your personal waves and the frequency of those drops. If you can do that, your performance will improve. Science cannot argue that. Your overall performance will improve if you can manage the drops in those waves. And that is what recovery is all about. That is what
the drops are going to come. You can't mitigate the drops. The drops are there. On a wave or even on a mountain trail, the elevation goes up and down. It's not just constant climb.
100%. But when you realize what your capabilities are in the drops, then you start to manage it. I think the hardest thing about this topic is that when people are in a drop, but they're trying to convince themselves that they're up high, that they're above the line. What elite sport has taught me is that you are completely capable of doing very good work when you're in a drop position. I think Americans do it all the time. Like, I mean, I think they have a lot of tough situations at home and they show up to work and they do good work. And I think the thing that I enjoy maybe the most about working with clients in the US and now working with clients, you know, all over the world, but especially in the US, is inviting them to not just keep the relationship about the collaboration, about what happens between the time they show up to work and the time they leave work, but what happens between the time they leave work and the time they come back to work the next day. There's so much to win there. And the reason I don't just say that in word, any of my friends in Oklahoma City who knew me when I was the chief executive officer of USA Canoe Kayak, they knew where I was losing the game. It wasn't, between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. It was between 6 p.m. and 9 a.m. the next day. And I've written about that, so often. But I think when you can start to make inroads there on rest and recovery and manage that energy better so that, when the next day shows up, you really do have what you need in the gas tank to do what matters most. And, this comes back to managing. There's a science to it and it's an art. It's not like this perfect thing. It balances, it needs your inner artist and your inner scientist.
One thing I'll close with, being a coffee guy, is asking what your favorite coffee spot is, why is that, and what do you normally order?
It's a great question. So Todd, first of all, you have to come over and have a cup of coffee with me at Velo Cafe. So I can walk outside of my house in Laseo, and we're a city of 13,000 people, and there's probably 30 great cups of coffee at different cafes within a 3 or 4 minute walk of my house. But if you go about 5 or 6 minutes away is Velo Cafe. And it's such a cool thing. The owner, he's interested in two things in life. He's like a coffee snob and professional cycling. So he built the whole coffee shop around his love for cycling. And over the last 6 or 7 years, we've had a lot of professional cyclists. Some of the best professional cyclists in the world have moved to nearby Andorra, which is the principality about 5 miles to the north of Laseo. So those professional athletes will come down out of Andorra. They'll ride down to Laseo to ride our mountains here in the Pyrenees. They'll stop and get their coffee, and you just see these amazing, like $10,000 racing bicycles in front of the coffee shop every morning. And the flooring on the inside is like very friendly for having bicycle cleats. There's a shower room inside the restroom if the athletes want to grab a quick rinse. And there's a lot of cycling and canoeing memorabilia on the wall. The canoeing athletes like going there as well. So that is like my place to get a cup of coffee. The owner is just a wonderful spirit and wonderful conversationalist as well. And yeah, I get a cafe Americano because, it's just an espresso with a little bit of extra water in it. And he also makes amazing carrot cake as well. So I'll often get a piece of carrot cake to go with my coffee there.
Man,
so
that sounds fun.
That's what I'm drinking and eating these days at Velo Cafe.
I would have to come hit every single one of those coffee shops with you and do a little caffeine crawl. Well, man, this is great conversation today. I mean, just thinking about how we journey, how we overcome obstacles, and maybe the obstacle is not actually the obstacle. How would people connect with you if they wanted to? I know you do a lot of writing. Is there a way to follow you and connect and learn more from your perspective?
Yes. Thank you for asking. My website, joejacoby.com, when Jacoby is spelled Jacobi. It is super easy to subscribe to Thinking in Waves. Highly recommend people do that. Very short, weekly essays where I transfer these ideas from surfing offshore waves on the surf ski to an innovative model for clear and creative thinking. And I also share a lot of my favorite podcasts that I've done in content there as well. So my website is a great place. And if you're active on LinkedIn, look for me there. I don't do so much on social media, but I am pretty active on LinkedIn.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Well, man, this has been a great conversation and good hearing your story and your perspective. And hopefully this is some good wisdom that'll help other guys that are just starting out on their journey.
Todd, this has been so nice to reconnect with you. And the timing of this conversation couldn't have been better. And I look forward to giving you a big hug soon. Okay.
Well, man, I'll take it, brother.